are hardwired to fear the unknown. We're also hardwired to fear the shots that we never took. The only way that we can live fulfilled and with purpose and on purpose is you have to prioritize action over outcome. Action over outcome. A single type of action, imperfect action. Fear indicates that it means something and that it matters. Confidence equals values times action. The multiplication is how consistently we do it. Stop drifting on default and start living and operating by design.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Flow Over Fear. I am so glad you're here today. This was a lot of fun. This episode was a lot of fun. My guest today was Paul Epstein. He has spent nearly 15 years as a professional sports executive for multiple NFL and NBA teams, a global sports agency, and the NFL League office, where he broke nearly every premium revenue metric in Super Bowl history. And it was there he also opened a $1 billion stadium and founded the San Francisco 49ers Talent Academy. And I'll tell you, in this conversation, we have a ball, pun intended. But seriously, in this discussion, we talk about decisions, which is where he has his expertise after building a lot of experience in making decisions of his own as a high-powered executive in the world of professional sports. He's brought those lessons into his recent book, Better Decisions Faster, Unshakable Confidence for When You Need It Most. And this conversation that we have runs the gambit from how to find your core values to be your North Star to making decisions, to how to get to the end of your life without any regrets. I know you may listen to a lot of podcasts at maybe 1.5 or 2 times speed. I would almost suggest that you slow this one down because there's so much value in such rapid fire that Paul brings. He truly has a lot of wisdom and knowledge on this subject. And today, he is an award-winning keynote speaker, named one of Success Magazine's top thought leaders that gets results. Paul's impact continues offstage, providing leadership development and culture transformation programs for companies and teams, including Amazon, Disney, Johnson & Johnson, NASA, and the Los Angeles Lakers. And his work has been featured in ESPN, NBC, Fox Business, and USA Today. He's also the 2-time best-selling author of The Power of Playing Offense and his most recent book, which we will discuss in depth, Better Decisions Faster. Please welcome Paul Epstein. Paul Epstein, so glad you're here, man. I'm really excited about getting into this conversation with you.
Adam, I'm fired up, buddy. Let's do it.
Yeah, this is great. I mean, I really want to get into your backstory about how you got into professional sports, how you ultimately left the professional executive career in that and started down the speaking path and all these new things you're doing. But I do want to dig into the idea of decisions because I have this feeling about how we make decisions. And I know you've done a lot of research on this and to get to the point where you wrote a book called Better Decisions Faster, which we're going to talk about as well. But I feel like relating it to fear, that the idea of putting off decisions, and this is something I've done in my own life, of putting off some of the bigger decisions or some of just the decisions we want to make, maybe leads to greater fear in our life or greater anxiety or greater stress just because we're putting it on the shelf and it's just constantly sitting there. How does that resonate with you? Or is that something that is a thing, or what are your thoughts?
100%. And you and I, we initially met through Brand Builders Group led by the Vadens, and a big name in that is Rory Vaden. And I'll share a line from him and then I'll pivot into how I would respond to you. He says, "You are best equipped to serve who you once were." I'll repeat that. We are all best equipped to serve who we once were. So when I write books, when I wrote The Power of Playing Offense, it was the leadership playbook I never had. That was the thing Paul needed 10 years before. This blast from the past in the sports industry, when you get promoted from player to coach and you ask, where's the playbook? And they say, what playbook? Good luck. Okay, so I knew there was a gap. And then the same thing with Better Decisions Faster. We're all fearful. We all see risk and consequence. We all feel this doubt. Like, what if I make the wrong decision? What are the consequences? What's the negative ripple effect? So, Adam, you, me, everybody listening in, if we say we're not afraid, we are lying. And so the key is, how do you turn it into an ally? It's kind of like me as a speaker. One of the biggest problems that organizations face and then how they find me is they hear that Paul is good in the blue skies, but he's better during a storm. In other words, if we are facing highly disruptive, high change, highly uncertain environments, if things are volatile, Paul's message is going to hit even harder. So I am very much the storm and the change and the uncertainty guy. And if you think about it, what did all those different elements bring? Fear. Because people, we are hardwired to fear the unknown. We're also hardwired to fear the shots that we never took. So a good buddy of mine, his name's Torian Richardson. Now he's an executive for NVIDIA, but he's just a great thought leader. I mean, just a Harvard background, done a ton internationally, especially in China. He's got some pretty incredible accolades out there. But he did a consulting project with folks that were in a terminal state. So, kind of sad, right? Like they've got days, weeks, or months. It's known that there's a time clock left and there's not much time left on that clock. And he interviewed them. And as he transcribed roughly 1,000 of these conversations, so a healthy enough sample size to pull some decent themes and findings and observations. And he transcribed all of them. And he said the number one word in all of those conversations was regret. Regret, regret, regret. And then the insight as he dove in and double clicked on every single one of those conversations or comments about regret. It wasn't, hey, Torian, 30, 40 years ago, I asked her out for a date and she said no. And that's just a massive regret. No, absolutely not. It was all the things that they never took their bat off the shoulder. So in life, we focus so much on, I hold the bat to hit the ball. We want success. We want the outcome. We want some assurance. Some of us want a guarantee, or we have paralysis, or we get stuck, or we get fearful that oh man. And then it leads to the worst decision of indecision. But in this case, what those folks in a terminal state did not regret was, you know what? I went for it and it didn't work out. They're not going to their tombstone with regret for the swings and misses. They're going to the tombstone with regret for the swings they never took, which for me, the big insight there is, if fear is in the unknown and regret is for the shots or the swings that we never take, the only way that we can die without regret, the only way that we can live fulfilled and with purpose and on purpose is, you have to prioritize action over outcome. Action over outcome. And not just a single type of action, imperfect action. We all have to embrace this knowledge, this truth, that at the beginning of almost every single process or any single journey, our actions are going to be highly imperfect. Here's a cool analogy for you. So now I'm 2 best-selling books under my belt, and I'm very humbled and honored for those accolades. And I'm surrounded by folks in my circles that have, oh my gosh, 10, 20, 30, however many New York Times bestsellers. And it's awesome. But you know what? What they tell me, Adam, is, Paul, I don't care if you're a New York Times bestseller or you're a first-time author just kicking the tires on an idea. You know what all of us have in common? Bad first drafts.
Yes.
Think about
that's
that.
100% true.
Dude, yeah. Bad first drafts, right? So 100%. A New York Times bestseller is I sucked at the beginning, but we only see the trophy at the end. And that's the problem. Instagram is the top 0.00001% of people's lives. And then comparison is a thief of joy. And so landing the plane here, and then I'll kick it back to you. I think we're being fearful for no reason, because fearful is like change. Fearful is like risk. Fearful is uncertainty. And at the end of the day, I just think that's the ante to play. Actually, I think fear indicates that it means something and that it matters. To me, if I am not afraid, if I don't look at risk and it kind of scares me a little bit, then it's probably not meaningful for me. There's a lot of things that you're like, hey man, if you jumped off this and would you be afraid? And I'll say, well, actually, no, I wouldn't be afraid because I just know it's something I'm not going to do. Like, I just don't even want to do it. It's just taking that jump doesn't mean anything to me. But when it was about becoming an entrepreneur, when it was about leaving sports, when it was about asking the biggest questions of my life, oh my gosh, those are deeply meaningful. And that's why it scared me.
Yeah. Well, those decisions are scary, and that idea of keeping your bat on the shoulder kind of resonates with me as a Colorado Rockies fan. I see that all the time where they're, but that's
especially in that ballpark, everybody needs to be swinging. Come on now. Like, we all know that there's like pop-ups that like go out of the park. So anyways, that's a little baseball talk. Yeah.
So true. But yeah, but I think that idea of imperfect actions over outcomes, I love that, because that the idea that when we're interviewing people who are in terminal stage of life, or they're at the end of their life, that they're looking at their life and they're not regretting the failures that they've had. They're regretting the actions that they didn't take. That should really speak to us. Even if we're in that moment of fear of making a decision that is hard, and where avoiding that decision can feel incredibly easy. And I'd love to hear do you have any steps that people should take to just maybe bring that courage to take that initial action, as imperfect as it may be, whatever it is?
I love that you teed it up as courage, because inside of Better Decisions Faster, I call them the 4 C's, and they happen in a natural progression. The challenge is when we think about courage, I believe that's an end state. So are we making courageous decisions? Are we taking courageous actions? The problem is, if we start at a point of courage, I believe that that's when fear can win, because I think that's too big of a leap. You don't go from 0 to courage overnight, and I don't think there's a wand to create courage. However, there are 3 prior C's that lead to the 4th C of courage, and here they are: clarity, confidence, conviction, courage. You start at a point of clarity. If each C is a muscle and you flex that muscle consistently, the compounding effect of you stacking up a lot of clarity is, the more clear you are day after day and week after week and month after month, your confidence, the second C, begins to rise. And then you flex the muscle of confidence. And day after day and week after week and month after month, you're embedding confidence into decisions and actions. Then you have conviction. And then the same natural byproduct. So this maturation from clarity to confidence to conviction to courage, those are the 4 C's of Better Decisions Faster. But now let me share the process of how we make better decisions faster. Because Adam, when you ask a question about fear and paralysis and a challenge, that's something we all face, is this natural, the bigger the stakes, the bigger the consequence, the bigger the fear, that's when we get paralyzed. And I think that a big piece of the fear comes from, we don't have a process. We don't have a system. If I took 100 people off of random sidewalks and said, what's your go-to process to make decisions? I promise you, a few might give me a halfway decent answer. The majority would look at me like, that's a great question. I have no freaking clue. Because that would have been my answer. Before writing Better Decisions Faster, I wrote Better Decisions Faster because it was the playbook that I needed, because I too was stuck. I too lacked clarity. I had inconsistent confidence, inconsistent conviction, and courage. While it was a core value, I would say, okay, Paul, sometimes it shows up, but not always. Why? And I tried to demystify that code. So here's what we came up with. And this is after auditing thousands and thousands and thousands of personal decisions, clients' decisions. So we went through the matrix on this. And by the way, fun fact for everybody listening in, did you know that today you were going to make 35,000 decisions? 35,000. 35,000. Wow. Adam, today you're going to make 35,000. Tomorrow, 35,000. The next day, 35,000. So welcome to the club. The average adult makes 35,000. Oh my gosh. It's too many. Okay. Now, thankfully, for most of us, they're on autopilot. So whether it's turning left into the driveway, whether it's brushing your teeth, you don't need a book like Better Decisions Faster for those decisions. I hope. But what about those handful a day of higher stakes, higher consequence, higher value? So in sports, there's a term, MVP, most valuable player. I call these your MVDs, your most valuable decisions. So let's unpack how to tackle your most valuable decisions. And for everyone listening, I want to make this real. Let's not give a hypothetical. I want you to come up with an MVD right now as you're listening to this, a most valuable decision, one of higher stakes, one of higher consequence, one of higher value, personal or professional. What are you facing right now that you might feel stuck or challenged by? Okay. So now that you have this decision in your mind, here is the process. I'm going to invite you to check in with your head, your heart, and your hands. Your head is your mindset. Your heart is your authenticity, and hands are action. But let's not think of head, heart, hands as three isolated elements. They're all connected through an equation that I call the head, heart, hands equation. The equation is head plus heart equals hands. In other words, when deciding whether to use your hands, whether to take action, there's two checkpoints, head and heart. Head, do I think it's a good idea? Heart, do I feel it's a good idea? And just like when we're driving a car, we know exactly what to do at an intersection. Green is go, red is stop, yellow is assess. And that's how the equation works. So everyone listening, for your MVD, for your most valuable decision, if your head and heart are on board, it is a green light. 10 out of 10 times you take that action. The opposite, no head, no heart, red light. Don't do it or stop doing it. And then when one of the two is on board, head or heart, that's a yellow light. And I wrote the book, Adam, because I believe that we all deserve a green light life. And I wanted to fill the world with an abundance of green lights. I also wrote the book because when we're unaware, we subconsciously run reds. And the compounding effect of running reds for months or years, we end up in a really bad place. A lot of the world's problems are because we have been running red lights without even knowing it. And we ask ourselves, how the heck did I get here? And then that yellow, well, my friends, that is the messy middle. I wrote the book because the Lord knows we need a playbook to conquer and navigate the messy middle of yellow. So that's the masterclass on better decisions faster and the head, heart, hands equation.
And I love that framework because as you were talking about that, I was doing that in my own mind, thinking about one of the MVDs that I have in my life right now, which is, as somebody who's running a family business, there are certain crucial conversations I have to have with family that might, bring out, may take out artificial harmony, say, right? And so my head is thinking, gosh, I don't want to do that because it's just, there's fear in there, right? But my heart knows it's the right thing. There's a green light there, but there may be a red light in the head. So that's creating this yellow. And immediately as I think that, though, it helps me to navigate that a little bit better. It's like, okay, well, in my head, what is really causing the fear? I mean, is it really just is it an ego thing? Am I afraid to address those issues there? Am I afraid I'm going to hurt someone or how? So it really helps to navigate that better. And it makes me more interested to learn more, certainly, about how to navigate those yellows for sure.
Yeah. And what you just brought up, you brought up a difficult conversation, a challenging conversation, and we all face those, right? Whether we execute on them or not, obviously, like you said, sometimes they kind of fall into this frozen zone. But I'll give you an example of a process that it's a cousin to the head, heart, hands equation. And it's a formula for how we build and sustain unshakable confidence. So if you were to look at the book, Better Decisions Faster, the subtitle is Unshakable Confidence When You Need It Most. And so I have coached confidence to groups and leaders and individuals that range from Navy SEALs to Olympians to NFL athletes to Fortune 50 CEOs, Shark Tank entrepreneurs, and the list goes on. And here is the formula. And then I want to engage with a quick journaling activity that tackles exactly what we can do when we're at that crossroads, like you are with, do I have the family conversation or not? Because I think that's a critical one. So the formula is confidence equals values times action. Confidence equals values times action. The multiplication is how consistently we do it. In other words, show me a person that takes consistent action on their values. I'll show you a confident person. Period. full stop. So when I'm sharing this inside of a keynote, I say, okay, that's the framework. But now how do you bring it to life? How do you put it on paper? And the journal is this. You journal once a week, and I recommend doing it for 4 weeks because then it can become a habit. And if it's not going to become a habit, then it's just like any other New Year's resolution. Why do it? We're wasting our time. But if we do it 4 weeks, we know it's going to stick. But here's the journal. I will live my value of blank by blank. I will live my value of blank by blank. The first blank is a value that you choose. So I would show a list of values. And in this case, Adam, let's say that you had a core value of courage. That's one of my core values. And it actually ties perfectly to that conversation that you need to have. So if it's, I will live my value of blank by blank, the first blank is the value. The second is an action. So remember, confidence equals values times action. So in this case, the journal is how you bring that to life. Now, okay, let's engage with a hypothetical example. Let's say courage is a core value. So I could journal something like, I will live my value of courage by having that challenging conversation that I've been putting off. In that case, Adam, you wouldn't, if you journal that, you wouldn't have the conversation because Paul said. You would have the conversation because courage is a core value. So the more consistently you swing the bat and you act on the value of courage, you're proving to yourself, I am a person of courage. I am a person of courage. I am a person of courage. And you're creating this loop of confidence to say a value leads to a decision, leads to an action. Value, decision, action. Value, decision, action. Like this is the science underneath everything. This is not accidental. So when I say I'm a confident person, it was years of process of embedding intentional confidence in my decisions and actions. When I'm a person of courage, if I'm a person of growth, if I'm a person of impact, of authenticity, those are all my values. I had to go through journaling practices and processes. And then I coached it to others to say, is this a Paul thing? Or does this really work for other people? And now when I start to write books about it, I'm not taking guesses. It's tried, it's true, it's proven because I've already done it personally and I've coached it and I see the same transformation. And that's what we're talking about right now. That's the process that I engage for anybody that wants to embed more confidence in their life through their decisions and actions.
That's so great. And I know that this is something that you've not only learned about through a lot of research and developing this whole process, but it's something that you've lived. I know that you have a pre-confidence life that you talk about and a post-confidence life. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your story and how that pre-confidence, Paul looked like. What was that like? I mean, were you already working in the professional sports world? Where were you there? And yeah, just maybe give us a little insight into that.
For sure. And when I say pre-confidence and post-confidence, and it's interesting because at the time we're recording this, and probably by the time it drops, if you were to go to my website at paulepsteinspeaks.com, you'll see a confidence masterclass. And the reason I created this masterclass is to teach how I went from pre-confidence to post-confidence. And when people hear that, especially the ones that meet me in this current state, they say, there's no way in heck that you were ever lacking confidence. And I say, look, I'm not going to tell you that I was ever down in the dumps. I'm going to tell you that I was inconsistent. So if you would have caught me on a certain day, bullish confidence. You caught me on the next day, man, I was lacking, So it was just this roller coaster of highs and lows. My confidence, it went up and then it dipped, up and a dip, up and a dip. And yeah, sure, sometimes it was a diagonal up and to the right, but still, like there were always dips. And humbly speaking, Adam, I'm here to tell you that right now, brother, like I don't have dips. I don't have dips. And it doesn't mean that like it's something where there's perfection. It doesn't ever become arrogance. There's no ego when I say that, which is why I'm careful in how I say it. It's because I've created processes and systems to lock in on my daily decisions and actions on how I show up, connected to what I stand for, connected to who I am at my core. And that last piece, who am I, is something that I did not know for the majority of my career. So on the outside, on this high profile sports executive that rose through a lot of ranks, like I started as a very humble telemarketer for the LA Clippers when Kobe and Shaq were on the other side of the hall. ESPN said you're the worst brand in sports. Sports Illustrated front cover says worst franchise in sports history. And I'm banging out cold calls. Try selling the worst franchise in sports history, okay?
Oh, I was a Clippers fan in LA when they were that way. Yeah,
oh
so I know
my gosh. So you get it. So I probably called you,
Right.
okay? And maybe that's how we met initially. But dude, like that's really what it was. And you cut your teeth and you get your butt kicked, man. And like you sign up for a job that's 99.9% rejection. You want to talk about fear and stress and anxiety. And I was the only person to make it a month 3 on the job in my entire cohort. You know, like it was a sink or swim, kind of a sharky environment. Like it was gnarly, man. But those are the learning lessons that I wouldn't trade for the world, because I didn't want to work for the champ. You want to work for the underdog. You don't do that intentionally, but the champ doesn't hire, the underdog does. So you find yourself working for the underdog, and now you have to prove yourself. But the good news about working for an underdog is everybody knows that nothing was given to you. You had to be scrappy. You had to be tenacious. You had to have the mental fortitude. And a lot of this sounds like a motivational meme or a speech or whatever. Like actually, it really does boil down to these simple fundamentals, such as control the controllables, that got me through these chapters. Because in a world that's increasingly negative, increasingly toxic, in a job that is heavy rejection, with a brand that was laughed at and ridiculed and mocked and insulted, and scandalous things happen with a team owner, and you're there representing the brand and like all this, and you still have a job to do, and you still have to produce, and you still have to perform. And so the fast track on my journey, and then I'm going to get to my pivot point from pre-confidence to post-confidence, is, you know, we sold a lot of widgets at the Clippers, and thankfully I was the number 1 sales guy. So then you get the promotion to manage the team that you were once a part of. I asked for a playbook and they didn't give me one. And that was my promotion from player to coach. And now I'm leading a team. And we went from 28th in league revenue for the team that I inherited out of 30, and year over year with the same bad product on the court, from 28 to number 2. When you achieve 28 out of 30 to number 2 out of 30 year over year, you're going to catch a lot of attention. And that's what happened. So then New Orleans calls, hey, we've got something for you. Sacramento Kings call. And then Legends, which is an agency owned by the Yankees and Cowboys, call. And that's what lands me in the NFL league office. And you break some all-time Super Bowl revenue records. Then the 49ers say, we're opening up Levi's Stadium, and it's going to be the Silicon Valley crown jewel. Create an executive level role for me. Bang, I'm over in Silicon Valley. And that's the LinkedIn profile from entry to executive level. But here's the gap. The gap was, while the world says bravo, and the world says you're killing it, and the world thinks you're crushing it, and on paper, you are. The title, the money, the responsibilities, the accolades, all of the sex appeal of the sports industry. I could walk into any single place I wanted in the greater Bay Area, and it's a thing. It's a thing. And I had this external success, but I had this gap of significance on the inside, you know, and the challenge, Adam, is I didn't realize it until I went to a retreat that ended up changing my life. So it was back in 2016, all the Niners executives, we go offsite for 2 days, find your why, unearth your core values. And for most people, it ended there. It ended as these North Stars. But I got obsessed with, how do I apply these things on Monday morning? How do I take a distant North Star into Monday momentum? So now when you hear me talk about Win Monday, now when you hear me talk about Monday momentum, this was the birthplace. I never knew I would build a company or a brand or deliver a keynote about it a decade and a half later. I never knew. But that's the origin story, because I saw the power of what happens when you have discipline and rigor and process and system and commitment. None of those things would I have used to describe myself in the past, but now that's my calling card, because when I have applied those things on a Monday morning, I can't lose. And that's where the unshakable confidence comes from. But before I knew my values, the why is great, don't get me wrong. And I believe in the why, but sometimes it's too abstract. I don't know what to do with a why on Monday morning. But you know what I do know what to do with on Monday? My values. I can connect values to decisions. I can connect values to actions. And so when I gained this gift of confidence, when I graduated from pre-confidence to post-confidence, that whole resume that I told you about in the sports world, Adam, I was on a confidence roller coaster. Yeah, sure. I'm getting the promotions. I'm getting the accolades. I'm getting all the trips and the planes, trains, and automobiles are coming and the trophies are there. But there were private conversations where imposter syndrome is a thing. And I'm always trying to sound like the smartest person in the room. I'm trying to have all the answers. I get overly obsessed with career growth and it probably hurts some people along the way. Like these real things, man, these costs. There are trade-offs to chasing success too hard. And as high performers and high achievers, we just want to win, but there's always a cost to winning. And if you're not aware of what that cost is, you're going to ruin the rest of your life. And I saw a lot of people ruin it around me, and I was too young in the mind to be aware of it. So I fell into some traps. But then when I found my core values, and one of my 5 core values, Adam, is authenticity. And that to me is the gateway to everything else. When you can authentically live and lead on your terms versus just plug into other people's goals and programs and playbooks, that's when my confidence changed. That's when my life changed. But I needed this retreat to wake me up. And it was the obsession with putting the retreat into action on Monday and beyond. That's where I went from pre-confident, inconsistent confident Paul to now, dude, fire the bullet. And I'm not going to flinch. I'm not going to flinch, but it's because I've had so many years of locking in on marrying who I am to how I show up.
Hey everyone, I interrupt this program to introduce you to a powerful tool that will help you gain clarity on your vision and accelerate your growth and achievement. If you're listening to this show, it is likely that you have an exciting vision for your life. But the problem is that we often get caught up in the day-to-day. We get distracted. We face uncertainty, overwhelm, and self-doubt. And as a result, the gap between where you are and where you want to be seems insurmountable. And that's why I created a framework for how you can turn your vision into strategic, disciplined action that will accelerate your results in the next 90 days. I call it the Vision Reflection Retreat. It is a 2-day solo excursion designed to reignite passion and adventure into your busy life and realign your focus toward your why. This is the very same framework that I use every 90 days to reflect on my own life and my vision and set my goals for the next quarter. And it has been a game changer. And the good news is that I'm giving away this Vision Reflection Retreat guidebook for free when you sign up for my newsletter. Simply go to flowoverfear.com/retreat and download your free guide and enjoy the journey. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it ties into that first part of the 4 C's you were talking about getting clarity. So you got clarity on not just your whys, but your values. And you shared 2 of them, authenticity and courage. Do you mind sharing your other values with us?
Absolutely. Belief, growth, and impact.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So I think it's important to know that, because not so that anybody listening or myself or anybody can just adopt the same values that Paul has, but really to dig in and find what your values are. And that serves as that North Star, as Paul said, to really just find and start creating the systems around making decisions around those values, which is so powerful.
And Adam, one quick resource to shout out here, and I know that you and your team are awesome. You'll throw everything in the show notes. We'll include a link to my confidence quiz, which is on my website. And a part of taking the confidence quiz is not only will you know 1 to 100 where your confidence stands, which is great. More importantly, there's a game plan for how to raise it over time. And in that game plan, the PDF that's sent to you after, there's a list of values and the values journal that I already described. So if somebody says, hey, this sounds awesome, but I may not have full clarity or confidence on what my values are, by taking the confidence quiz in the post recap, you're going to see a list of values. So that'll give you a fast track to those answers.
That's so great. And I mean, a lot of people people need a prompt a lot of times just to know what's available. Okay. So authenticity, that is something I do value. And I think that's great that you have that as part of your confidence quiz, which is something I think that I would encourage everybody to take. regardless of how confident you think you are. I think you can learn a lot about yourself by becoming self-aware if you're willing to do those kinds of things to learn about yourself. A lot of times, just as you said, Paul, I don't think we see where we might be feeling that sense of insecurity or that sense of like significance that you were talking about. I know for me, it's always a sense of self-worth. Am I worth it? Am I worth doing this? Am I worth talking to Paul on a podcast? I feel like that's something that a lot of us wrestle with, no matter how much we achieve or how great our LinkedIn profile looks.
100% on everything you just said. And also going back about a minute or so, when you said, take the quiz no matter how confident you are, amen to that. And here's why. Because even if the quiz comes back and tells you you're a 90, 92, 94, like you're a rock star, right? I think one of the problems we get into when we evaluate confidence, because very few people have studied it as much as I have. And trust me, I'm not the most studied person in the world, but for certain topics, I really do dig in. Like for me, if you want to talk about confidence and decision-making and momentum, like those are three things that I obsess about. Okay. So with confidence, here's one of my big ahas that I want to share. Confidence is not a light switch. It's a dimmer switch. Here's what I mean by that. A light switch is on or off, meaning I'm either confident or I'm not. It's yes or no. It's black or white. Wrong. That would be a sad state because then you're going to get stuck in the roller coaster that I was in for the majority of my career. But now it's a dimmer switch. So you can take a quiz. Maybe you are a 92. Maybe you're an 81. Maybe you're a 70. Or maybe you're a 48. Regardless of where you stand, it's a data point of today. And with a dimmer switch, you can grab it and +1, +2, +3, everything that I advise folks to do, everything that I coach people toward becoming the most confident version of themselves, it's not to go from off to on like a light switch. Is to today, this week, we're going to plus it up 1. We're going to plus it up 2. We're going to plus it up 3. You are in control of your dimmer switch. The key is you need the data point for awareness on where do you stand today. And then we grab that dimmer switch. And as long as there's more up days than there are down days, but you always know, like I'm in control of this piece versus like, hey, external circumstances, the market, the economy, a pandemic, a crazy ex, whatever it is, there's a lot of things out of your control. So anyways, it's a dimmer switch, not a light switch. That's one of the keys to confidence.
Yeah, I love that. And that's really helpful because it goes back to kind of what you were talking about with inconsistency. And that really, really resonated with me because I feel like there are these times where you kind of feel like superpowered. You're making these decisions and you're just like, yeah, I'm crushing it today. But then there's other days where it's just, I feel like completely inconsistent with the confidence where it's like, I'm just, I have to put this off. It's causing me too much anxiety or what have you. So I love that you can use your values as your North Star, that you really let those be your guiding principles. So you were a high executive position with the 49ers when you had this kind of epiphany with regard to bringing your core values into your decision-making process, systematizing it. What did that look like in the ensuing months and years, or as far as how it changed your career and maybe your perspective on life?
So from the retreat forward, it was this obsession with how do I take, especially my values, what do I do with them on Monday morning? How do I connect them to my decisions and actions? So here was my process. I put them all on paper and I defined each value in my own words. No Webster dictionary. How would Paul define growth and impact and courage and belief and authenticity? So I had my own definitions. And then I gave myself a test in the mirror. In the mirror, Paul, if you're really a person of this value, that value, of growth, of belief, show me, prove it, do one thing, take one big swing of the bat. And so with my first value of growth, my definition was, this is the mindset that I will attack each day with. Growth is the mindset that I will attack each day with. And then my big swing of the bat, I said, Paul, do something that you said you would never do. So I wrote some things down on a paper that I would never do. This is a short list, but on that list, Adam, was I will never go back to school. And the reason I said that was in the sports industry, not having an MBA didn't hurt me. You could climb to an executive, a C-suite. You could be a president, CEO, and not have an MBA. In some industries, that's impossible. You hit a ceiling without those three letters, not in the sports industry. So I told myself, what's the point? But what's the point is what somebody with a fixed mindset says versus a growth mindset says, what if? So from what's the point to what if? And so I leaned into that. I focused on the possibilities. I focused on the opportunities, and I took the leap. And I went back to school. While I'm still in sports, I get into one of the top executive MBA programs, University of Michigan, Ross School of Business. They had a program in LA, so it was an easy commute from the Bay. And bam, join it. A month into the program, an executive coach was assigned to me. I had never had an executive coach in my life. Prior to that, mentors and advisors, but they were in the sports industry. They knew my boss better than they knew me. So when they asked me, Paul, how's it going? I said, great. Even if things weren't great.
Right.
I was like, dude, you know my boss better than you know me. I'm going to give you a 60%. So with my executive coach, her name is Sue Ann, I was fully able to open up. No handcuffs. And Sue Ann ended up changing my life in one conversation. And here's that conversation. She sat me down. I'm a month into the program, still in sports at the time. She says, Paul, I understand what you do. You're the head of sales for a football team. What do you love about it? What do you hate about it? And what do you tolerate? Love, hate, tolerate. Great questions for all of us to ask ourselves, whether about a career or anything else. Love, hate, tolerate. So I answered all three. And then she said, go deeper on the love bucket. I was like, okay, all right, the love bucket. All right, Sue Ann, well, I love being a leader. I love the people side. I love the culture side. I love being a coach, just like you. And she said, awesome. On a good day, what percentage of your time do you do that? So now I'm slouching down in my chair, knowing that I would hate the answer. I puffed it up to 20%. The truth was probably 5 to 10%, but I said, Sue Ann, 20%. And she said, okay, if I wave a wand and you become your boss tomorrow, does 20% go up, down, or sideways? And I thought about my boss. They're almost all strategy, no people. So I said, Sue Ann, I think it'd go down. And this was the question, Adam, that changed everything for me. This was the question. She then said, so what are you after? Such a simple question that can have such profound meaning, especially if you haven't asked yourself that in a long time. So what are you after? Adam, I stopped asking myself, what am I after? I was just climbing and growing and what I thought was succeeding. But I stopped asking myself, is this my ladder? Is it leaning against the right wall? Should I stay on this treadmill? What Sue Ann woke me up toward was stop drifting on default and start living and operating by design. That was the big seismic shift. And so now after this conversation, I back into the day-to-day grind, but I'm still fresh off this convo. And I said, just through taking action on a value of growth, it leads me to a wonderful woman named Sue Ann that has this life-changing effect on me. And then my next value of impact, and this is the one that led to the big leap, impact, which is my strongest core value based on my late father. And, in his memory, he was a person of impact in a continuation school. And I've dedicated my life to him. And I can go as deep as you want on that. But needless to say, I would fall on the sword for impact. And for me, my definition of impact is making a difference. And I measure it by, am I leaving people and places better than I found them? And when I asked myself, can I create more impact inside of the walls of the sports industry or beyond? I had to go. Staying in sports, I would have been leaving massive impact on the table. So I wanted to make my hero proud. I wanted to be true to my strongest value of impact. And so I made the decision. But think about the value of growth takes me to school, introduces me to Sue Ann, opens a fixed mind to become a growth mind. Then I double down on my strongest value of impact, which inspires a courage is a core value, leap. Belief, my next value, it took belief in self. It took belief from people like Sue Ann. And then authenticity is my last core value. And authenticity, I finally felt like I found myself. People always ask me, Paul, why'd you leave sports? I didn't leave sports. I found myself. And that's the story. And those are 5 values that could have died as 5 words on a sheet of paper after a retreat, or for a company, you can have your 5 shiny words in your lobby wall, and it could mean nothing unless you obsess about the decisions and the actions that you make and take connected to those words.
That's it's such an amazing story, and talk about the courage to take an action on something, leaving a job that many people believe they would dream of, and I say believe because it's just something maybe they're craving significance, maybe they're craving this idea. I did hear a statistic that you put out there on another show that you were on about the number of people that maybe start in the sports world wanting to be the executives. And can you share that with us? Because I think that's a really powerful.
Oh my gosh. Heck yeah, I can. Yeah. So here's a stat. So it was a survey done when I was pretty early in the business, and it was a single question survey. And the audience were 2 profiles: entry level in the sports business industry, and then vice president. So meaning that's already a handful of promotions in. Let's assume they already have 10 plus years, maybe 15, maybe 20, but they're grizzled vets in the industry. So we're either asking entry level or VPs. And the question was, one day, do you want to become team president? That's it. Yes or no? And so naturally, the entry level, like all green and wet behind the ears and the whole thing. Oh my gosh. If it wasn't 100, it was 99.9999. Like sure. Everybody says yes, right? Like, right. Of course, why would you get into it otherwise? But then the human elements and the reality sets in, and you realize at what cost and what are the trade-offs? And is this still my treadmill? All the same questions I was asking myself, but maybe these people didn't have a retreat, right?
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, the percentage fell below 50% for the VPs. And so if you think about, even if you plussed it up and you said, over the course of a career, 50% say, I don't even want the top spot anymore. And then 50% say, I either still want it or I'm still deciding. Like, think about what that says. And here's what it really means. Like, let's get real here versus me just making a story up about a hypothetical VP. When they look at a team president, they see the pressure, they see the scrutiny, they see the sacrifice, they see the hours, they see the commitment. Like the team president of the Niners, if he wasn't doing 6 dinners out of 7 nights, it was a slow week. So think about that. 3 kids, 6 dinners, on planes everywhere. Oh, owners want to get all these investments going around the world. Guess who's going to go do the shaking hands and kissing babies? The face of the franchise. And it's not always the owner. So like, it sounds sexy and it sounds glorious, but at what cost? And as an entry-level person, you're like, I don't care. I want it. Because you probably don't have a family. And you probably, even if you did, you're like, screw it. Like, I want it because you're just so hungry. But at some point, you're like, what do I really want to prioritize in life? What makes me feel alive? And where do I want to invest my time? And going back to our original conversation, Adam, if this short game of life was to end tomorrow, would I feel like I left it all out on the field and the things and the people that mattered most? Or would I die with regret? And I think if you can have the agency of choice and the agency of decision and the lack of dying with regret, those are 3 of my prisms that I constantly look through, that I say, like, if for whatever reason something happened to me tomorrow, as sad of a day as it would be, and as everything else at the celebration of my life, I would want people to know I did not die with regret. And I earned the right to make choices and make decisions through life experiences and falling down and getting up and being curious and growing and learning and evolving and giving without keeping score. All these things that turn into motivational quotes, they turned out to be standards of life for me. Mm-hmm. And so I'm just one small little testament to that whole journey.
Yeah. And you mentioned that the analogy of climbing a ladder
and you can change your mind. You can change your mind. Like, please, there's somebody listening to this right now that is stuck, and it's because you're afraid to let go of something that you don't even want anymore. But whether it's a relationship or a job, here's what I'm here to tell you. If after 15 years in the sports industry, which I had, if I would have been afraid to leave because, now I wasted those 15 years, then I would have stayed in sports and I would have lacked happiness and lacked fulfillment, not because they were unhappy or unfulfilling places. My life evolved. My life changed. My priorities changed. My values and my why became clear. I didn't know those things as I was climbing a ladder. So regardless of what your journey is, it's a sunk cost. What's happened has happened. You're not wasting 15 years in the sports industry, Paul. You needed every step of that journey to give you the clarity and the confidence to make the decision that you now need to make. The same is possible with a bad relationship. I always tell people, you're so afraid to leave. Every day you're with the wrong person is a day you're not with the right person. Why are you so afraid to leave? Like we fixate on I'm so afraid to pull the trigger. I'm so afraid to cut the cord when it's like, dude, that's exactly what's holding you back. And I know that sounds harsh, but the reality is you already know the right decision. It's the fear of not making it.
Yeah. There's this feeling of, or tell me if this kind of resonates with the idea of, that the decision that we're not making, it revolves around staying in the discomfort that we know versus the discomfort that we don't know.
Yeah, what's the bigger fear? The fear of same or the fear of change, right? That's a classic line that I did not create. But yeah, ask yourself, fear of same or fear of change? And people normally, until the fear of same feels like it is more significant or less significant, I guess in this case, that's when they'll pull the trigger. I'm just here to tell you when you know, which is why going back to that head, heart, hands equation, that's why you need to put things in a green, yellow, red format. And you need to say green is the goal. And if you're stuck in a dead end yellow, which by the way, there's a good yellow and bad yellow. The quick on that is when the heart is in and the head is out, you stay in the fight because it might be a timing thing. It might be a self-limiting belief. You might need to talk to a coach or a partner or a mentor, an advisor, get some of that pollution out of the head because your heart's in, and that's the hard one. But when it's the opposite, when your head is in and your heart is out, that will never become a green. You're lying to yourself.
Okay.
Oh, no.
Wow.
If only your head is in, good example. I led sales teams, the top seller, but they're toxic in the locker room. My head said keep them because of production. My heart knows they're not a keeper because they're bad with the team, but I kept them because of pressure and goals and expectations. And TikTok, years go by. Now I'm losing people because my culture has eroded because of toxicity and et cetera. And so now I've got recruiting, engagement, and retention problems. I didn't have any of those problems. I had yellow light problems. I made bad yellow light decisions in hindsight, and it cost me, and it cost a team, and it cost the culture, and it cost the organization. So a lot of my consulting practice is how do we navigate and conquer that messy middle of yellow, because yellow is a silent killer, especially when only the head is in. You're not going to wake up with a new heart tomorrow. You're lying to yourself.
Yeah, that's such a great point. And I love that idea that you give a little bit of favor, or you give favor to your heart in those cases. And that heart's too. So that's so good. That's so good.
It's your truth. Yeah. The head's going to justify and rationalize and tell you what you need to know. And And by the way, because I know we talk a lot about fear here, sometimes it's like, oh, I'm not loving the career path or job path, and there could be a greener pasture, but I have a family. And so the head says financial concern, which I get. I am not the guy that says take some radical leap tomorrow. Nope, I'm not that guy. That would be irresponsible. I would never give that advice. But here's what really, pardon my French, here's what pisses me off. Here's what pisses me off. If you know that you're not in the right place, and you know that there could be a better place, and you do nothing about it, I don't mean take a leap tomorrow. I mean, what are you doing at nights, in weekends? There's an industry that interests you. Are you setting up coffee meetings with people in that industry? Are you doing research in your spare time? Like, what micro actions are you taking? You're just thinking about this fearful big action. I'm talking about the small stuff that leads up to the big action to even see if it's the right action. And if you don't do that, then you can't complain about current state. So like, I think fear is like, we create our own fear. It's like, you know what's not fearful? Doing research. You know what's not fearful? Going on coffee meetings. Fear is leaving a big job and making an industry pivot. That's fear. but the steps to like give yourself clarity and confidence in that decision are not fearful. And if you do those micro steps, now you're going to have less fear or no fear in the eventual potential decision. So focus on the micro actions. Stop thinking about the big leap.
Yeah. So small steps leading to those big actions, and that reinforces obviously the confidence that you're going to build the conviction that it ultimately leads to the courage.
Exactly
So
right.
good. And all of this is in the this decision making framework is in the book Better Decisions Faster, which is just such a great and such a needed book for people that may be living in that fear of uncertainty, that fear or that feeling like they just don't have that alignment with their values necessarily. And I'd love to before we jump off, we got Win Monday written in a few places all over on the screen here. Can you share a little bit about that, what your philosophy is around that?
Ever since that life-changing retreat, my obsession with Monday has grown exponentially because I believe it's the massive momentum builder in our lives. It's also this movement about people that have passion toward their work because they know that they're going to work over 100,000 hours. And I am not a work-life balance guy. I am a work-life harmony guy. I am a work-life integration guy. So if we're trying to win holistically, I'm trying to win in career, in health, in relationships, and beyond. And so I want to surround myself with this winning spirit, winning mindset. And here's what I know to be true as well, Adam. I've gone to countless events well before being a speaker that you leave super inspired and you're going to conquer the world and make all these seismic shifts. And then you've been ignoring your inbox. And so Monday you're playing catch up, and then your team, and then your boss, and then your spouse, and then your kids. And then you go back in the grind and the hustle. And then 1 or 2 weeks go by and you reflect back on that once inspiring event and poof, it's a sugar high.
Right.
So think of Win Monday and Monday Momentum as the anti-sugar high, because we're all going to get sucked back into life. And my job is to say, knock, knock, it's Monday. Here's one thing you can do to win the day so you can win the week. And then you're going to execute on that. Or maybe it's not the week for you, but then guess what's going to happen the next Monday? Knock, knock. Here's one new thing you can do to win the day so you can win the week. So it's this 52-week action plan that's intended to create more momentum. It's a growth engine. And my philosophy is I was tired of winning alone, so now let's win together. And so all of this is at winmonday.win. That's where you can find everything about Win Monday. It's a free gift from my heart that I offer to everybody I speak to. And for select podcast audiences, like we're tapping into your community today here, Adam, this is just something that like, this is our tribe, man. I'm looking for like-minded and like-hearted people that have unreasonable ambition. And you want to win, but more than just professionally, you just want to be a winning human being. And if you want to be a winning human being, that's who I surround myself with. And again, winmonday.win. That's it. That's where you sign up.
I love it. Yeah. So check that out. Winmonday.win. And go get to the end of your life with no regrets. I mean, this is just this was such an awesome conversation. I've got so many notes around things that we could do to build the confidence and the clarity, the conviction, the courage, all of these things. I mean, you've created an incredible framework here. And if you're listening to this, pick up the book Better Decisions Faster by Paul Epstein, and also go to his website. Take the confidence quiz. You'll learn more about where you're at right now. You'll get some more self-awareness so that you can actually level up that score and hopefully make some better decisions based on your core values. You will get a sheet that lists out some values that may help you find your own and get narrowed down on that. So do those two things after this. And if you want to do a third, go to winmonday.win and sign up for that newsletter to win the week starting early on. Paul, where else can people find you? Do we cover it?
Yeah, well, no, thank you so much, my friend.
Yeah.
Where we can land the plane is the home and the hub for everything is paulepsteinspeaks.com. There you'll find more about Monday Momentum. You'll see all the masterclasses around confidence. You'll see the confidence quiz. If you lead a team, you lead an organization, or you consider yourself a culture champion, great. Maybe you've got an event in mind, but really paulepsteinspeaks.com is going to be the hub for everything.
Awesome. Well, Paul, thank you so much for being here. This was a real treat for me personally and the audience. I know it. And thank you so much for sharing your time. And to everyone else out there, thank you so much for joining us today. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks. Thank you so much for joining me today on Flow Over Fear. If you are liking this show, please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button. That way you'll be first to know when I drop a new episode, including interviews or trainings or dad jokes. That's right, dad jokes. Add a little levity to your life. And if you liked this episode in particular and you think somebody can get something from it, please share it with a friend. And that way we'll spread the message together. Thanks again for joining me today. We'll see you next time.